And it's time for the front pages of the papers this morning on Breakfast Central as we comb Africa. Let's start off with South Africa. The Sowetan is our very first paper this morning, and it's got that big header right there in the front. Chickens home to roost. Mob abandons murder accused. Or cursed, yeah. And what's that story? What's that picture? Well, let's take a look at that story. Mob abandons, a murder occurs. Okay, can you see the people there? My question is, why are they covering their faces? Well, let's let you in on what took place as well. Well, it says not even relatives in sight as 14 stand all alone in the dock facing charges for the lynching of 8 alleged Tutsis in Zanzibar last year. We brought this story to you here on Breakfast Central. If you do recall, it was an incident that took place last year. Quite a sad one, by the way, where a number of persons were indeed lynched, 8 in number. And this was carried out by a mob action, and it wasn't really good. Now it's taken to court. Court told of gruesome killing of the 8 who were burnt alive. 2 victims survived the attack, and what we heard as at then was that they were in a critical condition. Yeah. So if they use the word survive, it means they did make it through. But it's going to be one hell of a lifetime living with that. Aside from the mental picture you would have to live with, you also have to live with the body pains and all of that. So that story is inside of the Sowetan. Find out what the 14 are saying, even though you can see in the picture they're trying to cover their faces as well. There's another story inside of the Sowetan. Santako snobs Labour's shutdown. Page 4 is that story. You also have another one. Gumed co-accused plead not guilty. You find that story inside of the Sowetan. It seems to be a lot of judicial cases inside of the Sowetan this morning. Tinkler, no panic mechanic. City badly want win against Chiefs. That's in sports. Lifestyle, you find it on page 8. Healthy eating without guilt tripping yourself.
I need that one. I need a lot of that one.
Taking that cake.
Yes, I need to read more on that story.
Yeah. I mean, as fitness guys, you know what I'm trying to say. But it's fine. It's fine. You know, it takes a lot to stay fit and trim in a suit. I know our producers probably wonder what did they say.
All right, let's move away from South Africa. Let's go to Zimbabwe this morning and see what we can find on the Newsday newspapers. It says there, Permanent Secretary dodges Parliament again. MPs demand explanation on 10 billion US budget blowout. You can read more on that on the Newsday newspapers and see what's happening in Zimbabwe with that story. I'll just share a little bit more. It says Finance and Economic Development Ministry Secretary George Guvamatanga yesterday failed to appear before the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee to explain the government's $9.6 billion over expenditure incurred between 2015 and 2018. So a lot of questions are going to be asked over there in Zimbabwe. Also, leave Chamisa out, and that's from a fundraiser. The final one this morning, not very many stories on the Newsday as always. It says Tendai Joy signs global distribution deal. That's on page 13 of the Newsday papers this morning.
All right, so that's what you can get there. Well, let's bring it back home now. Let's take a look at the very important stories affecting or emanating from Nigeria. It's got to do with the Punch. I'm going to start off from the top there. NNPC eyes 422 billion naira from 6 IOCs in August, page 19. A lot coming from the oil sector. Oil firms owe banks 5 trillion naira amid losses, theft. Oil firms owe banks 5 trillion naira. Wow, and the banks are indeed still going strong. Well, ASU NEC decides on strike on Sunday. So Sunday will be the final salvo when ASU will eventually either call off the strike or let it continue. Lawyer sues Buhari, others over NDDC management. That's another story you find. And talking about the NDDC management, I remember that there was indeed statements made from different quarters, especially we also talked about syrup as well. We keep seeing sue the president. When will the president respond to all of these cases? Well, let's move on to another one now. Rep summon TCN over $33 million payments to Genco. read that story. But the big one there focuses on insecurity and economic crisis. Atiku, Obis slam federal government. Shetima sells Tinubu's candidacy. And you read that story on page 2. The front page there, you could see, yes, it held yesterday. The entire Eko Hotel was indeed shut down.
Yeah.
And if you were on the island yesterday, everywhere was hectic to make your way out because of the all-important events that took place yesterday. But on the front page there, you see everything negative, situation pathetic, worst ever. PDP LP presidential candidates say, I will hand over federal varsities to states, says Atiku. Angry youths fold ex-vice president. Nation in disarray. Chimamanda Adichie, Tinubu will hit the ground running, according to Shetima. So you had all of these very important dignitaries. They spoke there, and it was indeed a very interesting what we hear. Very, very interesting. I think I'd like to take just one last story before I move over and hand over to Osange. This one. Building collapse, Lagos orders pro-police arrest engineer. That's on page 5. Another building collapse, yes, did take place over the weekend, and it's something that raised a lot of eyebrows again. But this time, the engineer has indeed been, caught, if I have to use that word.
The thing that I would always remind everyone, is how much different we are when disaster strikes in Nigeria. When we hear about market fires, we hear about building collapses. What changes, with regards to our emergency response? Do we now have faster, emergency response to a building collapse? Do we have faster fire service getting to, market fires? Do we have fire hydrants? But it doesn't seem like a lot changes. We really just, there might be some arrests, there will be some probing, but nothing really changes with the processes, with which we handle, our societies. And that's something that needs to change, as quickly as possible. Let's stay here in Nigeria. Let's see what we can find on the Nation newspapers. I'm going to bring Joe in on another story that we can see here. It says, Tinubu, Atiku, Obis roll out plans on economy security. But, the challenge with that caption here is, Bola Ahmed Tinubu was not at the summit yesterday. And, of course, his vice presidential candidate, Shetima, was present. So there was some criticism, and I want to get Joe's thoughts on this one. Would you see it as anything unusual that he couldn't be there personally? Would you expect that at least is something that he should have done?
Well, I'm just going to go by the statements that were made why he wasn't present there. Due to unforeseen circumstances or circumstances beyond his control, he wasn't there. I think people should try and just take it easy a bit. There are situations where you have important dignitaries, even presidents as far as Putin, name them, from international communities where you expect them to be at an event and they cannot be there. So they go ahead and send their vice, and he represents them. I do understand that Nigerians are trying to tie that with his health and so on, but I think it's something that if he couldn't make it, he couldn't make it. Yeah. Aside that, don't forget that the campaigns are indeed starting very effectively just a few days from now, weeks from now. So if he doesn't show up...
But this is the most common criticism that I saw with regards to this. A lot of people pointed out to, it seemed like it was mirroring the current administration. When there was times for public speaking to address the people, the president always, would hand over to the vice, and it seems like the, APC's candidate this time also, it seems like he's been shielded from public scrutiny, and that's why the vice was sent. And, so Nigerians have said, from what I read yesterday was mostly we've seen this before, this is not the first time we're seeing things play out this way, and it hasn't turned out good. So we would rather, have a rethinking, because if you can't come out, if you can't speak to people, if you can't do radio or television interviews, you keep sending the vice, and it means that there's some red flags there. Those were some of the things that were pointed out yesterday.
Okay.
But anyway,
Okay.
still on the Nation newspapers, why dumped NNPP, and that's by Shekarau. Scores of militants killed as NAF jet hits ISWAP camp in Sambisa. Lawyer, EFCC can probe state accounts and finances. And also on the Nation this morning, page 27, Tribunal grants Oyetola APC access to poll materials. We can also find here, no work, no pay rule. NLC backs ASU on salary arrears. Pay lecturers to end strike. Labour urges government. And we can also find 2 die, others injured in Lagos building collapse. And of course, BOI, Nexim, okay, 101 billion naira for rail sector funding, says the CBN. These are the big ones on the Nation newspapers.